Absent people. Okay, for number 1, in order for this absolute value to be 8, okay, so don't give me like what x equals right now, okay, what could be inside this absolute value in order for it to be 8? Negative 8 or 8. Or 8. Okay, so when we're solving absolute value equations, we have to break it apart into 2 separate equations, okay? So you just told me x minus 6 could be 8, or x minus 6 could be negative 8, okay? So every single time you have absolute value, you're always going to break it into 2 separate things, okay? So then, after you've broken it apart, all you're doing is solving those 2 equations. Okay, so I'm going to add 6 to both sides, and I'm going to get x equals 14, or what am I going to get on the other side? X equals negative 2. So when it comes to solving equations, granted, that was a really basic one.
That's the answer, right?
It's very simple. Yes?
Can you put the negative over the absolute value function? So it would be negative x plus 6 equals 7?
What do you mean? I'm not following.
Like, instead of having a negative, x minus 6 equals negative 8.
X minus 6
Have
equals...
a negative 6 plus, negative x plus 6 equals 8.
You could, but for how I'm going to teach it, we're going to do it this way. Okay, number 2. Okay, before we break apart our 2 separate equations, you have to make sure that what's in your absolute value is by itself. Okay, so right now we have 5 times the absolute value of n plus 10 equals 10. So I want to get the absolute value bars by itself first. So what do I have to do? Divide by 5. Okay, so now I have absolute value of n plus 10 equals what? 2. Okay, n plus 10 could be equal to what? 2 or negative 2. Okay, when we subtract 10 from both sides for both of our equations, n could equal what? Negative 8 or?
Negative 12.
Negative 12. Yes?
Couldn't you do like 5n plus 50 equals 10 and also get negative 8?
So you don't distribute ever, because it's not always going to work like that.
Okay.
You distribute with parentheses, not absolute value. Okay, number 3, absolute value of negative 9x equals 63. What are my 2 equations? Very good.
So you don't have to separate the 9 and the x.
Right, because it's inside of your bars. So you want the absolute value to stand alone. If it's not by itself, meaning there's numbers outside of it, then you have to get it by itself. Okay, so x is equal to what? 7 or negative 7. So for example, like number 4, Jordan, because the bars are by itself, like we don't have to get rid of the 7 or the 4 yet. Okay, so what are my 2 equations for number 4? Very good. And then you just solve one equation at a time. Subtract 4 from both sides. Very good. Oops. Okay, for number 5, what do we have to do? Do we divide first? We subtract. So reverse PEMDAS, remember? So subtract 2 from both sides and you get 4 absolute value of x equals 28. Then what do I do?
Divide by 4.
Then divide by 4. So now I have the absolute value of x equals 7. So what could x equal? Negative 7 or 7. Are we good so far?
What if it was negative 30 though?
We're about to get there. Next one. Okay, number 6. Absolute value of x plus 2 equals negative 8. What do I do? Subtract 2.
Negative 10.
So absolute value of x equals negative 10. Okay, if I put a negative 10 in there, am I going to get negative 10?
Oh, 14.
What are you going to get?
10.
You're going to get 10. What happens with any number that you put inside an absolute value? It's always positive, right? Therefore, this is just no solution. You cannot have an absolute value equal to a negative. Oh, sorry, I wrote it under that thing. But it's just no solution. Yes?
For number 5, we didn't split it into 2, like how we did before.
I mean, you could. We just skipped the step because what inside of that could give you 7? Negative 7 or 7. I could have rewritten it, but I would have. Essentially, I already did.
But even negative 8 would make sense there, right?
Negative 8 where?
Like number 5.
If I put negative 8 inside that absolute value, I'm going to get 8.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so questions on number 6. Okay, when you're solving, make sure your absolute value is not equal to a negative. Okay, it's no solution. All right, try the last 2 on your own. You're already done. Are you done? Yes?
I'm not sure about Is that right? No.
Y'all should write some work on your papers so that you can actually refer back to your notes and know what's going on. You do number 7 here. Sure, let me check it.
Do you want it simplified?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're taking things away that are inside the absolute value. You said 3b minus 2 equal to 25, and 3b minus 2 equals to negative 25. The only time you add and subtract is if it's outside. So, outside. What's in the absolute value stays in there until you set it equal. minus 2 equals negative 25.
Then we don't have to do.
And then you solve the equation. But you tried to solve it before you did your two different ones.
Isn't it the same though? 3b equals 27 equals 9.
That's one of them.
And then
Negative 25.
I messed up.
What happened?
I wrote like a plus, but I like tried to make it.
This is like the
Okay.
back. I don't know how far back.
Okay.
You need to go.
I will. Is it still these answers?
This is a minus 2. You're supposed to be adding 2 to both sides.
That's a minus. So plus.
I think so.
Okay, wait.
Not sure.
Is it 22 over 3? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do number 8 because I see a lot of the same mistakes. Okay, number 7. She got negative n equals negative 7 and n equals 22 thirds. Do we agree?
Where did you get 22 thirds?
So 1 minus 6n equals negative 43. Minus 1 from both sides. Negative 6n equals negative 44. Divide by negative 6. Negative 44 over negative 6 simplifies to 22 over 3. See it, Avery?
Yeah.
Okay. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. Okay. A lot of people on number, let's see, 8 have 9 and negative 9. Yes.
It's supposed to be wrong if I wrote the negative. Would it be wrong if I wrote negative 22 over negative?
Oh, no. But I mean, you should know that 2 negatives is a positive. Okay. Number 8. A lot of people have 9 and negative 9. Okay. And I'll start working it and I'll show you why you have 9 and negative 9. What's the first step? Multiply both sides by 5. So I have absolute value of 3v minus 2 equals 25. If you're getting 9 and negative 9, you already tried to add 2 to both sides. Okay? We're not there yet. After my absolute value is isolated and set equal to my number, or whatever's on the other side, okay, then what do I have to do? You have to write your 2 equations. Okay, so what are my 2 equations?
3b minus 2 equals 25.
Very good. Okay, now I solve my equations. Okay, so if I add 2 to both sides, I have 3v equals 27. And this time you do get 9. Okay, and then over here, when I add 2 to both sides, I get 3v equals negative 23. Divide by 3. And now I have v equals negative 23 over 3. And that does not simplify, so you just leave it. Raise your hand if you made the mistake of adding before you were supposed to. A lot of people, more than just what raise their hands, but it's okay. A lot of people had 9 and negative 9. Okay. Our favorite things, word problems. These are easy though, don't worry. Okay, the Earth's distance from the sun in June varies no more than 0.23 million miles from 94.27 million miles. Write an absolute value equation that can be used to find the Earth's maximum and minimum distance from the sun in June. Okay, so the formula or the format that we use for this is absolute value of A minus B equals the distance between A and B. Okay, so if A and B are the Earth and the Sun, okay, I'm going to be setting a absolute value equal to something. Okay, so if A and B are my Sun and my Earth, okay, they are equal to the distance between them. And what is that distance? It can be no more than what? 0.23. So that's what's going to go over here. So the distance between them is always what it's set equal to. Okay, what would be inside of my absolute value?
94.27.
Okay, we know that that's going to be in there. What else?
Minus
X. Okay, so how's it going to look inside of my absolute value? Very good. X minus 94.27. Okay, solve that. You should get 2 answers. Solve it. No, I think you set up an inequality. Yeah, it says equation. Okay, what are the 2 different values you could get? 94.5 or what? 94.04. Very good. So, just looking at the word problem, you know that it couldn't vary any more than 0.23 from 94.27. So 94.5 is 0.23 greater. 94.04 is 0.23 less. Okay, so you know that you wrote the right equation. Okay, had you put x plus 94.27, your answers would have been negative, and you can't have negative distance. Okay, so any questions on this? You can always go back and check your work. So once you write your equation, solve the answers, and then double check to see if they make sense with what your original word problem said. Questions on the front page? Okay, turn it over. Okay, now we are looking at inequalities. Okay, hopefully we know that absolute value is the distance of x from 0. Okay, so if I'm walking out my front door and I run left, or whether I run right, I'm still running, let's say, 3 miles, whether I run to the left or to the right. I'm not running negative 3 miles because I went left. Okay, distance is never negative. I wish it was, because negative 3 sounds way better. But it's never negative, okay? So if absolute value of x equals 3, the distance of x from 0 is 3 units. So it could be 3 or negative 3. So on a number line, if I have 3, and negative 3. Okay, this distance here is 3. And the distance here, oh my gosh, that was terrible, is 3. Okay, so whether you go to the left or to the right, it's still 3. Okay. So inequalities, okay? Inequalities are very similar to absolute value, or to when you're solving just the equations, okay? However, when you change your sign of what it's set equal to, per se, you have to also flip your inequality sign. Okay, so for absolute value of x is greater than 3, x could be what? Any number greater than 3, or less than negative 3. So you flip your sign and your symbol. Okay, so what's on the other half of your inequality becomes negative, and then you flip your sign. Okay, so if we were to graph this, go ahead. Okay. So if we have negative 3 and 3, do we have open circles or closed? Open. Okay, and if x is greater than 3, which direction are we going? Right. Less than 3? Less than negative 3, sorry. Left. Okay, so anytime you have a greater than sign, so x greater than 3, okay, think greater. Okay, you should have an or statement, and it should be going in opposing directions.
Great tour.
Haha, you like that?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great tour.
Okay, so it should be going in opposing directions. So greater than signs are an or, and it goes in opposing directions. And this is how you would write your answer. So if it asked you, oh, that was a bad box. If it asked you for your solutions, that's what you would write. X is greater than 3, or x is less than a negative 3. Okay, on the other side, okay, we have absolute value of x is less than 3. So you could have x is less than 3. What else could you have? X is greater than negative 3. So switch your sign and switch your symbol. Okay, so if I graph this, negative 3 and 3, do I have open circles or closed? Open.
It's just in between.
Ooh, very nice. This time we're in between. So, less than. Jordan, you don't like it? Okay, so rather than saying or, okay, when you have less than signs, the word and goes between, and you have just one segment. You're not going to forget, I promise. Okay, and then a sandwich. Okay, so it's together. That's the last one. Y'all are laughing now, but I bet you won't forget. Okay. This time, though, how would we write this inequality? This one, to represent the graph. We wouldn't write x is less than 3 and x is greater than negative 3. How would we write that? Read your graph. What's the smallest value x can be?
In the middle of those two sides.
Negative 3 is less than x, which is less than 3. So this is how you should write this answer. If you wrote it like this, it's wrong. It needs to be written like this. You should do one statement. Okay? So or, 2 parts, 2 lines. Okay? And a sandwich and 1 statement. Got it? Sweetness. Okay, go through 11 through 16. You don't have to solve them. Okay, we'll do that together. But go down and label and or. So just write and or. So if x is greater or x is less than. Okay, 11 and or. And, okay, when I solve, okay, first thing, same thing as last time, you want to make sure that your absolute value is isolated first. Okay, we're isolated in this case So I'm going to have n plus 9 is less than or equal to 1. And what? N plus 9 is
Less than or equal to negative.
greater than or equal to negative 1. So remember, when you switch your sign, you have to switch your symbol too. You have to swap both. Okay, so then when I'm solving, subtract 9 from both sides. N is less than or equal to what? Negative 8. Okay, and then we also have n is greater than or equal to what?
8. Negative 10.
Negative 10. Okay, what's my graph look like?
Sandwich.
Negative 10.
It's a sandwich. Very good. Oh, I wrote it wrong.
It's going to be 2 solid circles.
2 closed circles. And like Philip said, a sandwich. Okay, so how do we write our solution?
Negative 10 is less than or equal to n, which is less than or equal to negative.
Sweetness. Very good. Okay, number 12. What's the first thing we have to do?
Subtract.
Subtract 14. So I have absolute value of negative 7x is greater than or equal to a positive 14. Okay, what are my two inequalities?
Negative 7x is greater than or equal to 14. Negative 7x is less than or equal to 14.
Very good. Ooh, tricky.
Oh, you flip the sign.
What happens when I divide by a negative?
You flip the sign.
You flip the sign again. So when you divide by a negative, don't forget to flip your sign. So now I have x is less than or equal to what?
Negative 14.
Negative 2.
Negative 2. And then over here, what do I have? X is greater than or equal to 2. And I forgot to ask you guys, was this and or or? Or. I'm not going to rewrite this. Okay, so I have closed circles at negative 2 and 2. And then what's my graph look like?
Sandwich. No, opposite.
Opposites.
Upside down sandwich.
Okay, 13. 8 minus 6m, or absolute value, of 8 minus 6m is greater than 32. So or and. Or, greater. Okay, am I isolated? Yes, so now I can solve. So I have 8 minus 6m is greater than 32, or what?
Less than negative 32.
Negative 32. Okay, subtract 8 from both sides. And I have negative 6m is greater than 24. When I divide by negative 6, flip your sign. So what do you have?
N is less than 4.
Negative 4. 24 divided by negative 6. Okay, and then on my other side, I have subtract 8 from both sides. Negative 6m is less than negative 40. Then what? Divide and switch your sign. So you have m is what? 20 over 3. Okay, and this was an or. And it should be opposite. So if I have a negative 4 and 20 over 3, open circles are closed. Open, and it is opposite. Okay, 14 or and. And what's the first thing I have to do? Subtract 5. Okay, then what? What do I do after I subtracted 5 from both sides? Write my two equations, which are okay, and then my other one. Very good. Okay, take a second and solve both of those.
I'm supposed to leave at 2 for a doctor's appointment. Can I check my phone?
Yeah. Okay. You're gonna miss one part, so ask Jordan. Or come in and ask. Okay, 14, you should have got negative 10 is less than P, which is less than 28. And was it a sandwich or sandwich? So it should have been one line segment. Okay, and open circles. Okay, you are doing 15 and 16 on your own. Go, if you haven't done so already. And I'll get 2 volunteers to do it on here. Do 15, I mean.
Okay.
You just treat it like a pen.
Okay.
Just right.
When you add 2 here, negative 3
Oh, wait,
plus
add 2. Yeah, it is. What is it? Get going. 16.
In the middle of it.
You do 16. You shoot like a pen.
literally things.
I feel like I would like look because I would draw that
Okay, number 15. X is less than -1 or X is greater than 5. And he has opposing, or two different little arrows going in opposite directions. Do we agree? Okay, number 2. X is less than or equal to -3. X is greater than or equal to 7. Do we agree?
No, you did that wrong. It should be negative. It should be or.
Okay, so relax. His graph and everything is right. The only thing that is wrong is just the solution and the way that you wrote it, okay? It needs to be an or, so you would leave it as X is less than or equal to -3 or X is greater than or equal to 7. So your graph matched or, but your solution went with and. That was the only thing. Okay, great job. All right, number 10. John's current weight. Guys, John's current weight of 158.5 puts him at the center of his weight class for wrestling. In order to stay in his weight class, John must stay within 6.5 pounds of his current weight. Write an absolute value inequality to represent John's weight class. Okay, so are we going to want a sandwich or a or statement? A sandwich, okay, because you want the data that ranges in a certain value. Okay, so we know that our symbol is going to be what? Less than or equal to. Okay, so what's going to go on the side of my inequality? The one that's not the absolute value. 6.5. So how we're varying always is what we set it equal to, or on the other side of our inequality. Okay, what's going inside of my absolute value? X minus 158.5. Okay, solve that. Okay, do we have and or? And. Okay, so you know that it's going to look something like this. What's my maximum? 165. What's my minimum? 152. Okay, so then your number line would look like this. So all of these weights are good to go. Okay, not finished yet. Okay, I'm handing out your homework and I want you to look at number 3. So as I'm handing this out, work through number 3. Okay, you should be working number 3. Shh. Jordan, turn around. Three, yeah. Okay, what do you notice it's different about 3? Okay, it has x on both sides. Okay, so when you have x on both sides, okay, you still do the same thing as writing your separate 2 equations. So 5 minus 3x equals 4x. 5 minus 3x equals negative 4x. Okay, so you're still doing the same thing. Okay, then solve. So I'm going to have 5 equals 8x. Oh, 7x. Good thing I can add. Thanks. Five sevenths equals x, and then over here, 5 equals negative x. So negative 5 equals x. Okay, so I get my 2 solutions. Okay, when you have x on both sides, you've got to make sure your solutions don't give you an answer that's negative. Okay, because absolute value can never be negative. Okay, so you want to verify when x is on both sides that your answers don't give you negatives. Okay, sometimes the negative solutions do work, so you don't just immediately discredit them and just cross them out. Okay, you need to actually substitute in and make sure that they give you positives. Okay, in this case though, if I put a negative 5 in for x, what am I going to get?
Plus 15.
Negative 20. Okay, if I put in negative 5 here, I have the absolute value of 20 equals negative 20. And we know that that's not true. Okay, so that is what we call an extraneous solution. Extraneous solution. Okay, so we would cross it off because it doesn't work. Okay, so when I substitute in 5 minus 3 times a negative 5 equals 4 times negative 5. Okay, this is 20 and this is negative 20, and that does not work. Okay, so that is what we call an extraneous solution. So, if you need to make a note on your paper, when x is on both sides, check for extraneous solutions. When x is on both sides, check for extraneous solutions. Okay, questions on that? Okay, down here, like on number 6, I had some people with questions on this when you set up your 2 equations. So one of them is essentially already set up for you. Okay, but the other one, when you set this side negative, okay, you have to change both of your signs here. Okay, so negative 6 plus r equals 3r plus 1. Does everybody see what I just did?
Yep.
Okay, so when you make that other side negative, you change every single term, not just the negative 6.
Why are you making the other side?
Because when you solve the equations, you set it equal to a negative.
Wait, so we would put 3r over to r?
Yeah, you still solve the equation like normal after you've written the 2. Okay, that is all I have for you. You have 10 minutes still to work and ask questions. I'll put the answers up here. You do have a skills check over this stuff at the start of next class. It's at the beginning. Okay, so make sure you are doing that homework.